Hello, welcome to another episode of the Ice Talks, where we implement change every day. Hey, Harold S. Reed Jr. here, also known as HRJ, your motivational coach, and welcome to another episode of the Ice Talks, where we implement change every day. Today, I want to talk to you about self-control. Now, there are a variety of quote-unquote selves that I could speak about: self-discipline, self-esteem, self-respect. But today I want to talk to you about self-control, which, simply put, is control of one's self. Now, something that's common amongst people who find themselves in negative situations and circumstances is they say, so-and-so made me mad, or you get upset with somebody and you're in a bad mood and someone else asks you what's wrong and you say, so-and-so makes me sick. This person, that person, the other thing makes me yada, yada, yada. Notice how I put little significance on the person and the feeling. The one word, or rather the two words that are constant in the examples I just gave are makes me. So-and-so makes me sick. So-and-so makes me mad. So-and-so makes me insert adjective here. It's a fallacy. You are lying to the person you're speaking to. You're lying about the person about whom you're speaking. And most importantly, you're lying to yourself. Because no one can make you sick, mad, angry, upset, insert adjective here. No one can make you anything. We make ourselves such a thing. No one can make you feel mad, angry, upset, guilty, or what have you without those emotions or feelings already being present within you. Whatever this person or those people or the circumstances may have done, said, or whatever, all that happened was this circumstance evoked this emotion within you that was already present. So no, so-and-so didn't make you mad. So-and-so basically struck the nerve that evoked the emotion of anger within you. So-and-so made me feel guilty. No, so-and-so didn't make you feel guilty. There is a feeling of guilt already within you that this person or circumstance evoked that emotion from you. So there's already something in you that makes you feel however you're feeling. However, what tends to happen with us is because we have a natural human self-preservation instinct that goes so deep that we don't even want to be held accountable to ourselves for our own stress, for our own negative feelings, for our own outside of our quote-unquote normal selves. There has to be someone else to blame. There has to be some other circumstance that's responsible, because I naturally wouldn't feel this way by myself. People, person, you listening to this right now, stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to yourself. Understand that however you feel is however you feel. Now, these feelings or emotions may be subdued, they may be dormant, but they exist. And when a certain particular circumstance or person says or does something that uncovers that particular emotion you're feeling towards that person or circumstance, then once the cover and the lid is lifted, it's like opening Pandora's box. All the negativity comes out, right? Now, how you handle that negativity, that is also up to you. Again, we are talking about self-control. So-and-so didn't make you mad. Something happened, and how you perceived and received that stimulus or that information evoked a negative response out of you, whether that response was anger, guilt, sadness, frustration. I mean, if you feel as though somebody's going to break your heart and you happen to be involved with someone and then the relationship goes sour, the natural response or the natural thing for a person to say is so-and-so broke my heart, so-and-so makes me sad or made me sad. No. You already had it in your mind. If this happened, how would I respond to it? Then that thing happens and you respond already in the sense or in the way in which you prescribed yourself to respond. So imagine if we were able to see it for what it is and then accept it for what it is and generate a different response, generate a different feeling. All right. I'm not necessarily saying, nor, you know what? I'm not even saying that if you are presented with a negative circumstance, someone says something unnerving, disrespectful, mean, or what have you, to you, that you should just smile and take it. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is come to terms and accept how you actually feel and understand that you are in control of your feelings. You are in control of your emotions. And when you can be in control of your feelings and emotions, you are even more so in control of how you respond to those feelings and emotions. There's a saying that goes, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. I'm paraphrasing. It's not a direct quote. Okay. But understand how true that is. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. Perfect example. Say you come home and you find your mate, partner, what have you, your significant other with another person. Okay, that's what and then you just, you go off and you grab the baseball bat or worse and you just clean house. You start wrecking up stuff, slap somebody in the arm or across the leg or worse, upside the head with the baseball bat, the frying pan, the skillet, whatever, right? And even the law will in some cases, will allow you what they call a heat of passion defense. The circumstance was so dire that your emotions just took the better of you. And for that split second or that split instant, you lost all rational thought. And people have literally gotten away with murder over the years on the heat of passion defense. And granted, there are times when this is true. Okay, I mean, listen, I'm not perfect. I'm a human being just like every one of you who are listening to this podcast. And if I were to come home and find some other dude laid up in my house, I don't even want to think about all the kind of furniture moving and smoke in the city that's going to be going on at that point in time, But at the same time, for maybe perhaps lesser things, somebody says something that's annoying. Acknowledge it as being annoying and then ask yourself, how am I going to respond to this stimuli? How am I going to respond to this circumstance? How am I going to respond to this comment? How am I going to respond to this person's actions? And then answer yourself, how am I going to respond? There was a case, as many of you may know, and some of you may not know. I'm a retired police officer. And I remember hearing about a story about a couple of cops who, when they're riding, they're partners, and they're riding together every day. And just a part of it, they're spending 8, 10, 12 hours a day, however many, hours they spend together on their shift. And every so often throughout their shift, they would throw what if scenarios at each other. What will we do if this happened? What will we do if that happened? And then a circumstance actually came up where one of their what ifs were true, because they would say, what if this would happen? And they would dialogue about it. They would talk about, well, I would do this, I would do that, you would do this, you would do that. Well, if this happens to me, you do this. If this happens to you, I'll do that. They created solutions to their problematic scenarios. And one day, one of their scenarios actually came true. And long story short, they were able to survive the incident because they had already dialogued and discussed what they would do in response to this particular what if happening. So I task you, I challenge you, I give you the homework of imagining your what if. Imagine, ask yourself, what would I do if I got fired from my job today? What would I do if I was accused of something I didn't do? What would I do if insert circumstance here? All right. And write it down. By all means, write it down. You should be keeping a journal anyway. And I'm going to probably do another podcast about journaling. But moving forward, write down, what would I do if? One column, what would I do if? That's at the top of the column. And then if this particular circumstance or this particular person says or this situation happens, what have you. And then in the second column, write down what your response would be. Or not even in a column, write down the question, what would I do if insert circumstance? Okay. And then under that, write down what your response would be. All right. Now be careful, because if you write this down, you're committed to it. I'm a very firm believer in committing to what's in writing. That's also a drawback from my career as a police officer, because once I put something in a report, it is what it is. And something else that they say about, report writing that I learned, if it's not in black and white, it didn't happen. Okay. So you can not write anything down. Okay. But then you may forget. And then you're faced with a circumstance. How did I think I would handle that response? I doubt you would even take the moment of pause to even think about what you thought about how you would handle that situation. You would just respond. That whole thought process would take a split second. However, if you did take the time to write down, how would I respond if this happened? What would my response be if that would happen? How would I handle this circumstance? One of the things that I'm deathly afraid of, and I'll open up and share this with you, because I've had this, I haven't had the experience, but a few of my friends have recently had the experience of losing a parent. I'm in my 40s, so a lot of my peers, people I went to high school with and known since that era of my life, their parents are in their late 60s, 70s, what have you. And some of them are, knocking on heaven's door, close to it, or have already gone through the gates, And I'm blessed and fortunate that I still have both of my parents with me. And even though I'm not close with my mother, I love my mom. We're just not close. But let something happen to her and let something be shaky about it. Oh, man. I think, what would I do if? What would I do if? Perfect example. When that shooting went down in Charleston, South Carolina, was that last year or the year before or whatever, the Mother Emanuel Church, or the Emanuel Church, Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, that's my mother's church. And she had told me after the shooting happened that she didn't go to Bible study that night because she wasn't feeling well. Now, imagine if my mother had been feeling fine and she had gone to that church and Dylan Roof would have gone up in there and my mother would have been one of the victims. Oh, best believe it would have taken about 10 people. Somebody would have had to come steal my car, get my car keys away from me, take my guns, you know what I'm saying? Because I'd have been on 95 South on a mission. That's how I feel. Fortunately, I don't have to worry about having done it. All right? Because that clearly is not rational thinking. But my initial primal response is, let something happen. Let that have been let my mother have been one of those victims in that church. I guarantee you would have not seen my behind on CNN talking about forgiveness and, the devil was in them and all this other crap that, I won't say crap, all the other words that were expressed on CNN and the other news networks. Trust me, it wouldn't have been no forgiveness in my heart at all whatsoever. But again, it's a matter of self-control. It's about how I would have taken in that information had it been such, and how I would have eventually responded. My immediate response would be, lock and load and hit the road. I like that. Lock and load and hit the road. Yes, that would have been my initial response. When my grandmother on my mother's side passed away, I hadn't seen this woman in 30 plus years. But when I got the phone call that she passed away, the first thing I did was jump in my car and, make sure my family was okay. That's the first thing I did, make sure my family was straight. But I happened to be on vacation at the time. And so I jumped in my car and I drove down to Tampa, Florida to be with my relatives, all of whom I had not seen in 30 plus years. And I figured the time to bridge that gap had come at this point, or at that point. Again, we have to think about how we're going to respond to the situations that come. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with total irrational responses coming to the forefront of your mind. As a matter of fact, the most raw emotions are going to be what comes out first. Why? Because negativity requires no effort. So if you're faced with a situation, naturally, the most negative response is going to be the first response because it requires no effort. Somebody punches you in the face and you see a brick on the ground and you fall, you want to pick up that brick. You want to pick up that brick and bash them upside the head with it. But what happens if you take that brick, bash them upside the head, and they fall, collapse, and die? See, we don't think about the after effects of our actions most of the time. And that's what self-control is about. Taking the time, taking the moment of pause to think about your actions. Taking the moment of pause to think about your actions and what the consequences of your actions will produce for you and the people around you whom you care about, or about whom you care. Try to use proper grammar here. All right? So I want to talk, so I'm talking to you about self-control. You have control of yourself. There is very little that can happen that you can't take a moment of pause and gather your emotions, gather your senses, gather yourself, collect yourself, and come out with a logical, safe, legal, and responsible response. So with that being said, I guess I'm going to leave you with this. Take the time. Take the time to think. Take the time to think and evaluate. And it can only be a couple of seconds. I'm not saying you have to sit down, something happens to you, and you have to go into a room, turn off the lights, play some Sade, and pontificate over the situation for hours on end. No, I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is you have the time, when faced with a particular situation or circumstance, to fall back and think about what the right thing to do is. Now, when you think about what the right thing to do is, make sure that the right thing is not also necessarily the easiest thing. The easiest thing, somebody says something slick to you, the easiest thing will be to slap them upside the head. The easiest thing, somebody says something about your mama and your mama passed away and you were close with your mama, or your mama didn't, or whatever, somebody says something out of pocket. The easiest thing to do, the first thing that comes to mind to do would be to slap the taste out of their mouth. But that's also the illegal thing to do, especially if this person doesn't pose a physical threat to you. They just said something real slick. All right, you can go on the internet and watch all kinds of videos on World Star and other avenues of internet entertainment, okay, where somebody says something slick and they got their teeth introduced to the back of their skull. But that's not, and while it may be entertaining and humorous to watch or disgusting to watch equally so, it is by no means the right thing to do if not faced with a physical threat at that time as well. So again, we're talking about self-control. You have control over yourself. The challenge comes in exercising that control over yourself. Hey, this is Harold S. Reed Jr., and thanks for listening to another episode of the Ice Talks, where we implement change every day.